In the year 1904, a small island nation shocked the entire world. Japan, a country many in the West still saw as weak and old-fashioned, went to war against Russia, one of the largest empires on earth. Russia had more soldiers, more land, and more money than Japan could ever dream of. Almost no one believed Japan could win. But over the next year and a half, Japan would humble the Russian army and destroy its navy in front of the whole world. This is the story of how that happened, and why it changed history forever. To understand this war, we need to go back a few decades earlier. For centuries, Japan had kept itself closed off from the rest of the world. But in the late 1800s, Japan opened its doors and rapidly modernized its army, navy, and industry. At the same time, Russia was expanding eastward across Siberia, building railways and looking for warm water ports in Asia. Both empires had their eyes on the same prize, the Korean Peninsula and the region of Manchuria in northeast China. Russia had already leased Port Arthur, a key naval base on the Chinese coast, and stationed its Pacific Fleet there. Japan saw this as a direct threat to its own security and its ambitions in Korea. Diplomats tried to negotiate a peaceful solution, but talks kept breaking down. By early 1904, both sides were preparing quietly for war. On the night of February 8, 1904, Japan made its move. Without a formal declaration of war, Japanese torpedo boats launched a surprise attack on the Russian fleet anchored at Port Arthur. Several Russian battleships were damaged in the chaos and confusion of that night. The attack stunned the Russian government, which had not expected Japan to strike first. Japan followed the naval strike with a full land invasion, sending troops into Korea and then into Manchuria. Russian commanders, thousands of kilometers from home, struggled to bring in reinforcements along a single unfinished railway line. Japan, fighting close to its own shores, could move troops and supplies far more quickly. Within weeks, the war had turned into a brutal struggle across the frozen plains of Manchuria. The land war reached its peak at the Battle of Mukden in early 1905. It was one of the largest land battles the world had ever seen, with more than 500,000 soldiers fighting across a wide front. Japanese forces used careful planning and coordinated attacks to slowly surround the Russian army. After weeks of brutal fighting in the bitter cold, Russian forces were forced to retreat from the city. The victory came at a heavy cost, with tens of thousands of casualties on both sides. Still, Japan had proven it could defeat a major European power in open land warfare. The world was starting to take notice. But the most dramatic moment of the war was still to come, at sea. Russia sent its Baltic fleet on an extraordinary journey, sailing all the way around Africa and Asia to reach the Pacific, a voyage of over 18,000 nautical miles. By the time the fleet reached the waters near Japan in May 1905, the sailors were exhausted and the ships were worn down from the long journey. Waiting for them was Admiral Togo Heihachiro and the Japanese combined fleet, rested, prepared, and perfectly positioned. In the Tsushima Strait, Togo executed a bold naval maneuver that put his ships in the ideal position to strike. The Battle of Tsushima was over in less than 2 days, and it was a total disaster for Russia. Nearly the entire Russian fleet was sunk, captured or forced to retreat, while Japan lost only a handful of small torpedo boats. It remains one of the most one-sided naval victories in modern history. The destruction at Tsushima broke Russia's will to continue the war. With help from the United States, both sides sat down to negotiate peace in the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The Treaty of Portsmouth was signed in September 1905, and Russia was forced to accept a humiliating defeat. Japan gained control over Korea and key territories in Manchuria, cementing its position as a rising world power. For the first time in the modern era, an Asian nation had decisively defeated a major European empire in a full-scale war. The victory sent shockwaves through colonized nations across Asia and Africa, proving that Western empires were not unbeatable. It also planted the seeds of ambition that would shape Japan's path for decades to come. Now, here is a question for you. If you were a military leader in 1904, facing an empire far bigger than your own, would you have dared to strike first? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed learning this story, make sure to subscribe for more real history brought to life.